She said our wedding was canceled unless I signed my $250,000 house to her parents. I refused, ended it first, and watched her life collapse overnight. My name is Royce. I am 34 years old, and for the past 10 years I have been pouring my heart, sweat, and every ounce of energy into building a career in digital marketing consulting. When I first started out, I had absolutely nothing to my name. I was sleeping on my parents' couch inside their cramped Chicago apartment, eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches every day because that was all I could afford, and cold calling businesses in a wrinkled suit that I bought from Goodwill for just $12. Those early days were brutal beyond belief. In that first year, I scraped together only $18,000 in total income, barely enough to keep gas in my old Honda Civic, but I kept going because I refused to give up on myself. By the third year, my efforts began to pay off. I finally moved into my own tiny studio apartment on the north side, and I had a steady flow of clients who actually paid their invoices on time. Little by little, I climbed out of that pit of struggle. Now I run a solid six-figure consulting business with no partners to answer to, no boss breathing down my neck, and most importantly, no debt holding me back. With that financial stability secured, I began investing in real estate. My first purchase was a modest 2-bedroom ranch that I paid off aggressively. A few years later, I found a run-down gem on Oak Street. It was a fixer-upper in an up-and-coming neighborhood, so I rolled up my sleeves, spent my weekends renovating it myself, and turned it into a beautiful rental property. That house now brings me $2,200 a month in passive income while its value continues to climb. That property represented years of grinding, sacrifice, and discipline. It wasn't just a house. It was proof that I had built something real out of nothing. That was the state of my life when I met Veronica. She was 31, worked in social media marketing, and carried herself with a confidence that immediately drew people toward her. We met at a networking mixer in downtown Chicago, and within minutes of talking over craft cocktails, it felt like we had known each other for years. She had a sharp mind, a sense of independence, and her own apartment in Lincoln Park. We clicked instantly over shared horror stories about difficult clients, and within 6 months, she was practically living at my place. After 2.5 years together, I proposed during a romantic weekend trip, and she said yes with tears in her eyes. I thought I had found the person I was going to build my forever with. But looking back now, the engagement period was the beginning of the cracks. The first red flags appeared slowly, almost disguised as normal wedding stress. At the time, I ignored them because I wanted to believe she appreciated my work ethic and valued the foundation I had built. God, how wrong I was. The trouble truly started when she suggested we open a joint bank account for wedding expenses. On paper, it made perfect sense. We both contribute, pay the vendors from one account, and keep everything organized. I transferred $22,000 into it right away, while Veronica added $7,500. At first, the transactions looked normal. Venue deposits, photographer fees, florists, all the expected costs. But soon, strange charges began appearing. Luxury shoes, spa appointments, and even a $1,400 bachelorette retreat at a spa resort. Each time I questioned it, she dismissed me with a quick excuse about how we only have one wedding in our lifetime. Still, I bit my tongue and tried to stay calm because I wanted to avoid conflict. But the real breaking point came when I found several hotel charges totaling nearly $3,000 for our wedding weekend. When I asked about it, Veronica matter-of-factly explained that those were rooms she booked for her parents, sister, aunt, and cousin. I reminded her that we had agreed our families would pay their own travel costs, but she looked at me like I was heartless for expecting her parents to spend their own money. From that moment on, she began treating my savings as if they belonged to her entire family. The phrase, "we only have one wedding," became her favorite justification for every new expense she dreamed up. Upgraded flowers, professional hair and makeup for all her bridesmaids, and even a videographer on top of our photographer. Meanwhile, she hadn't added another dime to the joint account beyond her initial contribution. She was burning through the money I provided like it was endless, all while playing the role of a stressed bride and accusing me of being unsupportive anytime I questioned her spending habits. By then, the account was draining fast, and I realized that I was basically funding a luxury wedding for her entire family, while she sat back and contributed nothing extra. And just when I thought the financial manipulation couldn't get any worse, she dropped the bomb that changed everything. One Sunday morning, about 6 weeks before the wedding, Veronica and I were sitting at my kitchen island with coffee and our planning binders spread out. At first, the conversation was about guest numbers and catering costs, but then she shifted the topic toward something I never could have expected. She spoke casually, almost as if she was discussing normal wedding details, when she said we should think about wedding gifts. At first, I thought she meant small thank you presents for our parents, but her expression told me this was something bigger, much bigger. She put her phone down and leaned forward, saying my parents did not need anything because they were comfortable, but her parents were different. They had spent years renting, they had credit problems, and they could never afford a home of their own. Then she looked at me with serious eyes and said the words that stopped me cold. She wanted me to sign over my rental property on Oak Street to her parents as their wedding gift. I could not believe what I was hearing. That house was worth around $250,000, and it brought in over $26,000 a year in rental income. To her, it was simply sitting there, waiting to be handed away like a token of generosity. I tried to explain calmly that the house was an investment I had worked for years to own, that it was part of my financial security and future. But she dismissed my words as if they were just excuses. She told me that real partnership meant making sacrifices for family, that if I loved her and wanted a real marriage, I should be willing to prove it by giving her parents the home. Her voice grew sharper, her tone colder, and for the first time I saw a version of Veronica that scared me. She was not asking. She was demanding. She told me plainly that if I did not sign the house over to her parents, then the wedding was off. I sat there in silence, staring at the woman I thought I knew, realizing she had turned my love into a transaction. She was measuring my commitment to her not by trust, respect, or partnership, but by how much of my hard work I was willing to surrender. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I saw the future clearly. If I gave in now, it would never end. Every sacrifice, every asset, every boundary would be pushed until there was nothing left that was mine. And so I looked at her, calmly but firmly, and said the answer was no. Her expression changed instantly. Gone was the sweetness she used to win me over in the beginning. In its place was pure entitlement and anger. She called me selfish, heartless, and claimed I did not care about her family. She grabbed her purse, told me to call when I was ready to be a real partner, and slammed the door behind her. For 3 days, she stayed with her parents without sending a single text or call. Strangely enough, those days were the most peaceful I had felt in months. No arguments over money, no dramatic sighs while I worked, just silence and space to think. On the 4th day, she finally called. Her tone was different, softer, almost like a salesperson trying to close a deal. She asked if I had thought about our conversation. I told her the answer was still no. That pause on the phone spoke volumes. I could almost hear the wheels turning in her mind, imagining how she would convince me to hand over the property. She tried again, saying this was the gesture that would prove I was serious about her, that it would mean everything to start our marriage on this foundation. But I stood my ground. I told her that helping her parents in smaller ways was possible, but signing over an entire house was never going to happen. That was when she said the final words that broke us completely. She told me coldly that if I would not agree, then the wedding would have to be postponed until I was ready to be the partner she needed. At that exact moment, I realized the relationship was over. She had placed our entire future on a $250,000 ultimatum, and there was no coming back from that. I ended it right then and there. And here is the truth. Once the engagement collapsed, her life began falling apart overnight. Without the house, without my financial support, and without the image of stability she had been building in front of her family, everything she was counting on crumbled. Meanwhile, I kept my house, my peace of mind, and most importantly, my self-respect. She thought she could manipulate me into handing away my hard work as proof of love. But in the end, all she proved was that she never really loved me for who I was. She only loved what I could provide.